The white lace of her wedding dress was streaked with mud and torn at the hem when Lillian Davies stumbled into the saloon at 9:30 on a Tuesday morning in Victor, Colorado. Her face a portrait of devastation that made every man at the bar fall silent. It was April of 1882, and the mining town nestled in the Rocky Mountains had seen its share of tragedy, but nothing quite like the sight of a bride in full regalia, her dark hair falling loose from its pins, mascara tracking down her cheeks in ugly black rivers as she gripped the door frame like it was the only thing keeping her upright. The bartender, a grizzled man named Pete who had served drinks through shootouts and claim disputes, simply stared as she took 3 wavering steps inside before her knees buckled. Warren Jacobson was nursing his second whiskey of the morning, trying to forget the ache in his shoulder from breaking a wild Mustang the day before, when the woman collapsed. His reflexes, honed by years of ranch work and the occasional bar fight, had him moving before his mind caught up. He crossed the sawdust-covered floor in 4 long strides and caught her before she hit the ground, his calloused hands surprisingly gentle as they steadied her weight. She was lighter than he expected, all bones and fabric, trembling like a newborn foal. "Easy now," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to cut through whatever fog had overtaken her. "I have got you." Her eyes, he noticed, were the color of honey in sunlight, but they were glassy with shock. She looked at him without really seeing him, her lips moving soundlessly. Warren guided her to the nearest chair, aware of every eye in the saloon tracking their movement. He knelt beside her, his worn denim trousers collecting sawdust, and tried to catch her gaze. "Miss, can you hear me? Are you hurt?" She blinked slowly, and then something seemed to crack inside her. A sound emerged from her throat that was part sob, part gasp, raw and wounded. Her hands clutched at the elaborate bodice of her dress, fingers digging into the delicate fabric as if she wanted to tear it off her body. "He left," she whispered, and the words were barely audible over the ambient noise of the saloon. "He saw me and he left." Warren glanced up at Pete, who was already pouring water into a clean glass. The bartender brought it over with unusual speed, and Warren pressed it into her shaking hands. She drank mechanically, water dribbling down her chin to spot the white lace further. "Who left, Miss Thomas?" The name came out like a curse. "My husband. My almost husband." She laughed then, a brittle sound that made Warren's chest tighten with an unfamiliar protective urge. "We were at the church. Father Murphy was reading the vows. I was so happy, so stupidly happy, and then Thomas looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw it in his eyes. Disgust. Horror. He dropped my hands like they burned him." Her breathing was coming faster now, the edges of panic creeping into her voice. Warren reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and covered one of her hands with his own. His palm was rough and warm, and she latched onto it with desperate strength. He said he could not do it. He said he thought he could look past it, but he could not. He said I was broken, damaged goods, that he could not marry someone so ruined. The words tumbled out in a rush, each one seeming to cut her deeper. And everyone was there, everyone we knew, watching as he walked down that aisle and out the door. My mother fainted. His mother called me terrible things, and I just stood there in this stupid dress, this expensive, beautiful, stupid dress, and I wanted to die. Warren felt anger kindle in his gut, hot and immediate. He did not know this Thomas, but he knew his type. Men who thought they owned the world and everything in it, who measured a woman's worth by impossible standards and discarded her when she failed to meet them. "What is your name?" he asked, keeping his voice steady and calm. "Lillian. Lillian Davies. Miss Davies, I am Warren Jacobson, and I need you to listen to me." He waited until her eyes focused on his face, really seeing him for the first time. He knew what she would see. A man in his late 20s with sun-weathered skin, dark brown hair that needed a trim, and eyes the color of slate. Nothing special, just another cowboy trying to make his way in a hard land. You are not broken. You hear me. Whatever happened to you, whatever this fool Thomas thought disqualified you from being loved, he is wrong. Dead wrong. She shook her head violently, fresh tears spilling over. You do not understand. You do not know what I am, what was done to me. Then tell me. The invitation hung in the air between them. Around them, the saloon had returned to a semblance of normalcy, though Warren could feel curious glances sliding their way. Lillian looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between her pale, delicate fingers and his tanned, scarred ones. 6 months ago, I was traveling with my family from Denver to visit my aunt in Colorado Springs. We took a private coach because my father had just closed a big land deal and wanted to celebrate. We never made it. Her voice had gone flat, mechanical, as if she was reciting facts that had happened to someone else. Bandits stopped us on the road, 3 men with guns and faces covered by bandanas. They shot our driver first. He was dead before he hit the ground. Then they dragged us out of the coach. Warren's hand tightened on hers, but he did not interrupt. They took everything of value. My mother's jewelry, my father's pocket watch, the cash from the sale, but that was not enough for them. She swallowed hard, her throat working. The leader, he had these cold blue eyes like chips of ice. He grabbed me, said I was pretty enough to keep. My father tried to stop him, tried to fight, and they beat him. Beat him so badly that he still walks with a cane, still gets headaches that leave him bedridden for days. My mother begged them to let me go, offered them more money, anything. The man just laughed. The horror of what she was describing settled over Warren like a physical weight. He wanted to tell her to stop, that she did not owe him this story, but he understood somehow that she needed to say it out loud, to give voice to the poison that had been festering inside her. They took me, kept me for 3 days in some shack in the mountains, and they did things, terrible things, all 3 of them. Her voice cracked, but she pushed on with grim determination. I thought I would die there, part of me wanted to, but on the 3rd night the leader got drunk and careless. I managed to get hold of a knife and I hurt him badly enough that he let go. I ran through the forest in the dark in nothing but my torn clothes, ran until my feet were bloody and I could not breathe. A family of miners found me the next morning, nearly dead from exposure. They got me home. She looked up at Warren then, her eyes blazing with a mixture of shame and defiance. So you see, I am ruined, used, broken beyond repair. Thomas knew about it when he proposed. I told him everything because I thought he deserved the truth. He said it did not matter, that he loved me anyway, that we would get through it together. He lied. The moment it became real, the moment he had to actually follow through and bind himself to damaged goods, he ran. Warren was quiet for a long moment, processing the weight of her confession. He thought about the ranch where he worked, about the horses they brought in wild and traumatized from rough handling. He thought about the patience it took to earn their trust, the slow process of showing them that not all humans meant harm. Miss Davies, I have spent most of my adult life working with animals, horses mainly, but also cattle and the occasional stubborn mule, and I have learned something important in all those years. He shifted slightly, his knee protesting the hard floor, but he did not let go of her hand. When something bad happens to a creature, when they are hurt or scared or broken down, folks have 2 choices. They can write that animal off as ruined, too much trouble, not worth the effort. Or they can do the hard work of earning trust again, of proving through patience and consistency that not everyone will hurt them. The first choice is easy. The second takes real courage and real love. Lillian was listening intently now, her tears slowing. You are not broken, Miss Davies. You are wounded. There is a difference, and wounds can heal given time and the right care. What happened to you was evil and wrong, but it does not define your worth. It does not make you less deserving of love or happiness or a good life. Thomas was a coward who took the easy way out. But I promise you, there are men in this world who would count themselves blessed to love you, all of you, including the hurt parts. Why are you being so kind to me? She asked, her voice small. You do not even know me. Warren smiled, a slow, genuine expression that softened the hard planes of his face. Maybe I am just a fool who cannot stand to see a lady in distress. Or maybe I recognize something in you that speaks to something in me. Either way, I am not going anywhere until I know you are all right. Do you have somewhere to go? Family here in Victor? She shook her head. We came up from Colorado Springs for the wedding. Thomas's family has a big house here. His father owns one of the profitable mines. I was supposed to move here, start my new life. Another bitter laugh. My parents are staying at the hotel on Bennett Avenue. I cannot face them yet. I cannot face anyone. Then you stay right here for now, Warren said firmly. Pete, bring some coffee and food for the lady on my tab. Warren, you do not have to do this, Lillian protested weakly. I know I do not have to. I want to. Over the next hour, Warren sat with Lillian as she slowly came back to herself. She ate the stew Pete brought without really tasting it, drank the strong black coffee, and gradually her trembling subsided. Warren talked to fill the silence, telling her about the ranch where he worked, the Bar 7, owned by an ex-soldier named Captain Henry Reeves, who had a soft spot for lost causes. He told her about the mountains and the way they looked at sunrise, about the satisfaction of gentling a wild horse, about the small community of ranch hands and miners who looked out for each other in the hard country. I have a little cabin on the ranch property, he said, his tone carefully casual. It is not much, just one room and a sleeping loft, but it has a good stove and the roof does not leak. The captain lets me keep it in exchange for my work. There is a boarding house in town run by a woman named Mrs. Chen, widow of a Chinese railroad worker. She is kind and she does not gossip. You could stay there until you figure out what comes next, or if you need to get back to your family today, I can escort you. Lillian considered this, her fingers wrapped around the warm coffee mug. I do not know what comes next. I thought my whole life was planned out. I was going to be Mrs. Thomas Whitmore, have his children, run his household, host dinner parties for mine owners and politicians. Now that is all gone, and I do not know who I am supposed to be. Maybe that is not such a bad thing, Warren suggested gently. Maybe this is your chance to figure out who you want to be, not who everyone expects you to be. She met his eyes and something passed between them, a current of understanding and recognition. You make it sound so simple. I did not say it would be simple, just that it might be worth doing. A commotion at the door interrupted them. A well-dressed woman in her 50s swept in, her face flushed with exertion and anger. Behind her came a man in an expensive suit, his expression thunderous. Lillian went rigid in her chair. There you are, the woman shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Lillian. You shameless creature, you have ruined my son, absolutely ruined him. The scandal of this day will follow our family for years. Warren stood slowly, positioning himself between Lillian and the newcomers. Madam, I think you need to calm down. And who are you? The man demanded, looking Warren up and down with obvious disdain. Some cowboy nobody. This is a family matter. I am a friend of Miss Davies, and I am asking you politely to leave her alone. The woman, who Warren guessed was Thomas's mother, laughed shrilly. Friend? She has been in town less than a day, and already she has found another man. I told Thomas this would happen. I told him women like her cannot help themselves. They attract trouble and ruin wherever they go. Warren felt his temper, usually well-controlled, begin to slip. "You need to watch your mouth, madam. Miss Davies has done nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong." The man stepped forward aggressively. "She drove my son to publicly humiliate our family. He is devastated, absolutely devastated, and all because she could not keep herself safe, could not protect her virtue like a decent woman should." The injustice of the accusation made Warren see red. Before he could think better of it, he had closed the distance between them and grabbed the man by his fancy lapels. "You want to repeat that? You want to blame a woman for being the victim of violence? Because where I come from, that makes you lower than a snake's belly. Warren, do not." Lillian's voice cut through his anger. She had stood up, was moving toward them with her chin raised despite the tears still staining her face. "They are not worth it. Let them go." The older man wrenched himself free, sputtering indignantly. "This is assault. I will have you arrested." "Try it," Warren said coldly. "I am sure the sheriff would love to hear about how you are harassing a woman who just suffered public humiliation at your son's hands." Thomas's mother looked between them, her face twisted with malice. "You deserve each other. A soiled dove and a nobody cowboy. My son is well rid of you." They swept out as dramatically as they had entered, leaving a ringing silence in their wake. Lillian swayed slightly, and Warren was there immediately, steadying her. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry you got pulled into this mess. Stop apologizing for things that are not your fault." He guided her back to the chair, his own heart still racing with adrenaline. "Those people are poison. Whatever their son told them, whatever story they have built up to make themselves feel better, it is lies. You know that, right?" "I know." But her voice was hollow, unconvincing. Warren made a decision. "Come on. Let us get you out of here. I am taking you to Mrs. Chen's boarding house, and then I am going to the hotel to talk to your parents. They need to know you are safe. I cannot ask you to do all this. You are not asking. I am offering." He held out his hand. "Trust me." It was a loaded question, given everything she had told him, and they both knew it. Lillian looked at his hand for a long moment, weathered and scarred and steady. Then, slowly, she placed her hand in his. "I do not know why, but yes, I trust you." Mrs. Chen's boarding house was a neat, two-story building painted cheerful yellow with white trim, standing out among the more utilitarian structures of Victor's business district. The proprietor was a tiny woman with iron-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp black eyes that seemed to see everything. She took one look at Lillian's ruined wedding dress and Warren's protective stance and ushered them inside without a single question. "You need room," she stated in accented but clear English. "And bath. I have nice room upstairs, faces east, gets good morning light. How long you staying?" "I am not sure yet," Lillian admitted. "I can pay. My father gave me money for the wedding for incidentals." Mrs. Chen waved this away. "We talk about money later. First you get clean, get comfortable. I bring food up, good hot soup. You eat, you rest. Tomorrow is time for worrying." She led Lillian upstairs with surprising gentleness, leaving Warren standing in the small parlor feeling oddly bereft. When Mrs. Chen returned, she fixed him with a penetrating stare. "This girl, she is good person." "Yes, madam, very good, just had some bad luck. And you, your intentions," Warren met her gaze steadily. "Just want to help if I can, make sure she is safe." Mrs. Chen nodded slowly as if he had passed some test. "You are good man, Warren Jacobson. I know your captain, Henry Reeves. He speaks well of you. You bring this girl here, you make sure no one bothers her. You are doing good thing." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Now you go talk to her parents. I keep her safe here. No one gets past me." The tiny woman somehow looked formidable as she said it, and Warren believed her completely. The hotel on Bennett Avenue was one of the nicer establishments in Victor. catering to wealthy investors and mine owners rather than the rough miners and cowboys who made up most of the town's population. Warren felt distinctly out of place walking through the ornate lobby in his worn work clothes, but he squared his shoulders and approached the front desk with confidence. "I am looking for the Davies family. I have a message about their daughter." The clerk's eyes widened with recognition and not a little gossip hunger. "Room 212, second floor, though I should warn you they are quite distraught. The wedding today was a disaster." Warren climbed the stairs and knocked firmly on the door marked 212. It opened to reveal a woman in her 40s with Lillian's honey-colored eyes, though hers were red and swollen from crying. Behind her, Warren could see a man sitting in a chair by the window, leaning heavily on a cane. This must be the father who had been beaten trying to protect his daughter. "Mrs. Davies, my name is Warren Jacobson. I am here about Lillian." The woman's hand flew to her throat. "Is she all right? We have been searching everywhere for her. After what happened at the church, she just disappeared and we were so worried." "She is safe, madam. She is staying at Mrs. Chen's boarding house on 3rd Street. She is shaken up, but physically she is fine." The father had struggled to his feet and was making his way over with painful slowness. "You found our daughter. We are in your debt, sir. Please come in." Warren stepped into the room, which was spacious and well appointed. He quickly explained how Lillian had stumbled into the saloon, omitting the more painful details of what she had told him out of respect for her privacy. He mentioned the confrontation with Thomas's parents, which made Mr. Davies's face darken with anger. "Those sanctimonious hypocrites," he growled. "Their precious son made promises to my daughter, vowed to stand by her through anything, and then he humiliated her in front of the entire town. But somehow we are the ones who should be ashamed." Mrs. Davies was crying again, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "My poor baby. She has been through so much, and now this. I should have protected her better. I should have never let her travel that day. If I had just said no to visiting my sister, none of this would have happened. Madam, with all respect, the only people responsible for what happened to your daughter are the men who hurt her. Not you, not her, just them." Warren's voice was firm. "And what happened today with Thomas Whitmore, that is on him. He is the one who broke his word, who failed to be the man he promised to be." Mr. Davies studied Warren with sharp eyes. "You seem remarkably invested in the welfare of a woman you just met, Mr. Jacobson." Warren considered his answer carefully. "Your daughter came to me at a moment when she needed help. I happen to believe that when someone needs help and you are in a position to give it, you do not turn away. That is all." "That is not all, Mrs. Davies said softly, a faint smile touching her lips despite her tears. "You care about her already. I can see it in your eyes." Warren shifted uncomfortably. "I barely know her." "Sometimes that does not matter," Mr. Davies said. He lowered himself back into his chair with a wince. "I knew I was going to marry this woman here within an hour of meeting her at a church social. She was organizing the food tables and bossing everyone around, and I thought she was the most magnificent creature I had ever seen. 26 years later, I still think so. Richard, Mrs. Davies murmured, blushing. "My point, Mr. Jacobson, is that connection is not always about time. Sometimes you just recognize something in another person that speaks to your soul." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But I need to know your intentions. My daughter has been hurt terribly, and not just today. She is vulnerable right now, and if you are thinking of taking advantage of that vulnerability, then we are going to have a problem." Warren straightened, meeting the older man's gaze without flinching. "Sir, I have no intentions beyond making sure your daughter is safe and helping her if she will let me. I am not looking to take advantage of anyone. I just want to help." Mr. Davies nodded slowly. All right, I believe you for now. Mrs. Davies stood up decisively. I need to go to her. She must be devastated. If I may suggest, madam, perhaps give her a bit of time first. She was pretty overwhelmed when I left her at the boarding house. Mrs. Chen is taking good care of her. Maybe visit tomorrow morning after she has had a chance to rest and process everything. Mrs. Davies looked torn but finally nodded. You are probably right. Oh, this is all such a mess. What are we going to do? Everyone in town knows what happened. The gossip will be unbearable. Then maybe Lillian does not stay in Victor, Warren heard himself say. The words surprised him even as he spoke them. Maybe she goes somewhere new, makes a fresh start where no one knows her story. And where would that be? Mr. Davies asked. There are other mining towns in Colorado, other places where a woman could build a life. Or she could go back to Denver or Colorado Springs with you. Anywhere but here, where every face will be a reminder of what Thomas did to her. The parents exchanged a long look, the kind of wordless communication that came from years of marriage. Finally, Mrs. Davies spoke. We will talk to her. See what she wants to do, but Mr. Jacobson, I want you to promise me something. What is that, madam? Do not hurt her, please. She cannot take any more pain. Warren thought about Lillian's honey-colored eyes, about the raw courage it had taken for her to tell him her story, about the broken sound of her voice when she said she was ruined beyond repair. I promise, Mrs. Davies, I would rather cut off my own hand than hurt your daughter. When Warren returned to the boarding house, the sun was beginning to set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Mrs. Chen met him at the door with a knowing look. The girl is sleeping. I give her willow bark tea for pain, strong herbs for calm. She needs rest more than anything. I will come back tomorrow then, check on her. You do that. Mrs. Chen tilted her head, studying him. You know, my husband, my Daniel, he was good man like you. When other workers on railroads say bad things about Chinese make trouble, Daniel always stand up. Say what is right, even when it is hard. You remind me of him. Warren felt a strange tightness in his chest. That is quite a compliment, madam. Thank you. He walked back to the livery stable where he had left his horse that morning, collected the bay gelding named Rusty, and rode out of town toward the Bar 7 ranch. The ride took about 40 minutes through beautiful country, rolling foothills giving way to higher peaks, with ponderosa pines dotting the landscape. By the time he reached the ranch, full dark had fallen, and his stomach was reminding him he had skipped lunch and dinner. The ranch house was lit up, smoke curling from the chimney. Warren took care of Rusty first, as was his habit, making sure the horse was fed and brushed down before attending to his own needs. He was just finishing when Captain Reeves appeared in the barn doorway. Warren. I heard you had an interesting day in town. Warren was not surprised. News traveled fast in small communities. You could say that. Heard you rescued a runaway bride and nearly got in a fight with Harold Whitmore. Harold Whitmore, Thomas Whitmore's father, owns the Lucky Strike mine. Powerful man around here. Captain Reeves was in his 50s, with gray shot dark hair and the bearing of the military man he had once been. He looked at Warren with concern. You made an enemy today. Warren shrugged. Would not be the first time. Tell me what happened. The true story, not the gossip version. So Warren told him, editing only slightly to protect Lillian's privacy. The captain listened without interrupting, his face impassive. When Warren finished, he was quiet for a long moment. This woman, Lillian Davies, you care about her. I barely know her, Warren protested for the second time that day. That was not my question. Warren sighed, leaning against the stall door. There is something about her, Captain, a strength under all that hurt. She has been through hell and she is still standing, still fighting. I respect that. Respect can become something more, especially when you add proximity and shared struggle. The captain's tone was not judgmental, just observant. Just be careful, Warren. The Whitmores are not good people to cross. Harold has influence, and his son is known to have a nasty temper when he does not get his way. You insert yourself into this situation, you could be painting a target on your back. I know. I do not care. Captain Reeves smiled faintly. That is what I was afraid of, all right. You do what you need to do. But watch yourself, and if you need backup, you let me know. We take care of our own here at the Bar 7. The next morning dawned clear and cold, typical for April in the Colorado mountains. Warren did his morning chores with unusual speed, earning curious looks from the other ranch hands. He saddled Rusty and rode into Victor as soon as he could reasonably get away, telling himself he was just checking on Lillian, making sure she was all right. Mrs. Chen answered his knock with a small smile. She is awake, having breakfast in dining room. You want to join? The dining room was a cozy space with 4 small tables covered in checkered cloths. Lillian sat at one by the window, wrapped in a simple brown dress that Mrs. Chen must have loaned her. Her hair was pulled back in a neat braid, and without the ruined wedding dress and smeared makeup, Warren could see her clearly for the first time. She was beautiful in an understated way, with delicate features and those remarkable eyes. But more than that, there was an intelligence in her gaze, a depth that spoke of someone who had seen darkness and survived it. She looked up when he entered, and something in her expression softened. Warren, I was hoping you would come. He sat down across from her, suddenly feeling awkward. I wanted to make sure you were all right. I spoke to your parents last night. They want to see you when you are ready. I know. My mother sent a note this morning. Lillian pushed her eggs around her plate. I am not sure what to say to them. They have sacrificed so much for me already, dealt with so much scandal and gossip, and I just keep bringing more trouble. You do not bring trouble. Trouble found you. There is a difference. She smiled slightly. You seem determined to reframe my thinking. Someone has to counter all the lies you are telling yourself. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Warren accepted coffee from Mrs. Chen and took a long drink, savoring the warmth. I have been thinking about what you said yesterday, Lillian said finally. About leaving Victor, starting over somewhere new. Part of me wants to run, to hide from all the staring and whispering. But another part of me is so tired of running. I have spent the last 6 months running from what happened to me, trying to pretend I could just go back to being the girl I was before. Marrying Thomas was supposed to be my fresh start, my proof that I was still normal, still worthy. But I was lying to myself. What do you want, Lillian? Not what your parents want, not what society expects. What do you want? She met his eyes, and he saw the vulnerability there, but also a growing determination. I want to feel safe again. I want to stop flinching every time a man gets too close. I want to sleep through the night without nightmares. I want to be strong again. You are already strong, you just do not see it yet. How can you say that? You saw me yesterday. I was a complete mess. You survived something terrible. You told your truth even when it cost you everything. You got up and left that church when you could have just crumbled. That takes strength, Lillian, real strength. She looked away, blinking rapidly. You barely know me. Why do you have so much faith in me? Maybe I see something in you that you cannot see in yourself yet. Warren leaned forward, his voice earnest. Listen, I know this is going to sound strange, and feel free to tell me to mind my own business. But what if you stayed in Victor for a while? Not forever, just a few weeks. Give yourself time to heal, to figure out what comes next. Mrs. Chen has room, and from what I understand, you have the means to pay for board. Your parents are here for a bit longer, and I would like to think maybe I could help if you would let me. Lillian stared at him in confusion. Help how? I do not know exactly. Be a friend. Show you around the area. Prove to you that not all men are like Thomas or those bandits. He felt his face heat up. That probably sounds ridiculous. No, she said softly. It sounds nice. But Warren, I am not looking for romance. I cannot imagine ever wanting a man to touch me again, ever trusting someone that way. If that is what you are hoping for, then I need to be honest with you now before either of us gets hurt. Warren absorbed this, the words stinging more than he wanted to admit, but he understood. I am not asking you for romance, Lillian. I am offering friendship. That is all. No expectations, no hidden agenda, just one human being helping another. She searched his face as if looking for deception. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she finally nodded. All right, I will stay for a few weeks, see how it goes. But I am paying my own way, and I am not going to be a burden to you or anyone else. Deal. Over the next 2 weeks, an unusual routine developed. Warren would ride into town most afternoons after finishing his morning work at the ranch, and he and Lillian would spend time together. Sometimes they walked around Victor, and he showed her the town beyond the fancy hotels and churches where she had spent her brief time as Thomas's fiancée. He introduced her to the hard-working miners, the Chinese laborers who had stayed after the railroad work dried up, the small but vibrant community of merchants and craftspeople who kept the town running. Other times they rode out into the countryside. Warren borrowed a gentle mare from the ranch for Lillian, and they explored the mountain trails and meadows surrounding Victor. At first, Lillian was nervous around him, skittish and watchful. She kept distance between them, flinched if he moved too quickly. Warren was patient, moving slowly, talking constantly to keep her at ease, never pushing or demanding. He treated her the way he treated a frightened horse, with respect and consistency and endless patience. Gradually, day by day, she began to relax. The tension in her shoulders eased. She laughed more readily, smiled without forcing it. They talked about everything and nothing. Her childhood in Colorado Springs, his years drifting from ranch to ranch before settling at the Bar 7, books they had read, places they wanted to see, dreams they had harbored and lost and found again. I always wanted to be a teacher, Lillian told him one afternoon as they sat by a creek, watching the water rush over smooth stones. I love children, love the idea of shaping young minds, but my parents wanted me to make a good marriage, and teachers are not exactly valued socially. So I set that dream aside and focused on becoming the perfect wife instead. Maybe you could still teach, Warren suggested. Victor has a school. They are always looking for help. Who would let me teach their children? Everyone knows what happened to me. Not everyone. And those who do, who let their prejudice get in the way, their children probably are not worth teaching anyway. She laughed, shoving his shoulder lightly. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact, and they both noticed it. Lillian pulled her hand back quickly, but Warren had seen the progress for what it was. You are terrible, she said, but she was smiling. I am honest. There is a difference. As the days passed, Warren found himself thinking about Lillian constantly. He would be working with the horses and remember something she had said, would be lying in his bunk at night replaying conversations in his head. He was falling for her, he realized with both joy and trepidation. Falling hard and fast, despite knowing she was not ready for anything beyond friendship, might never be ready, but he had meant what he told her. He would take whatever she could give him, even if it was only friendship. Being near her, seeing her heal and grow stronger each day was enough. It had to be enough. Lillian, for her part, was changing in ways she had not thought possible. The nightmares that had plagued her since the attack were becoming less frequent. She still had bad days when the memories pressed too close and she wanted to hide in her room. But Warren never pushed on those days. He would just sit with her, sometimes talking, sometimes in comfortable silence, a steady presence that asked nothing of her. She found herself looking forward to his visits with an intensity that scared her. He made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in months. But more than that, he made her feel seen. Not as a victim or a ruined woman or a source of scandal, but as a complete person with thoughts and dreams and value. He listened when she talked, really listened, and his opinions of her were not colored by pity or disgust. "You are becoming important to me," she told him one evening as they walked through town. "I want you to know that. You have given me something precious these last few weeks. Hope, I think. The belief that maybe I can have a life worth living after all." Warren stopped walking, turning to face her in the fading light. "You are important to me too, Lillian, more than I probably should admit. Warren, I cannot be what you want me to be. I am still broken inside, still so scared of so many things. I am broken beyond repair," she cried, the words bursting out of her in a rush of anguish. They were standing in the middle of the street, and she did not care who heard. "You deserve someone whole, someone who can give you everything." "I am just pieces, Warren, shattered pieces that do not fit together anymore." He reached for her hands, holding them gently in his own. "Then let me love the pieces together," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Let me show you that broken things can be made beautiful again, that scars are just proof of survival. You do not have to be whole to be loved, Lillian. You just have to be you." She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "You cannot mean that. I have never meant anything more in my life." He reached up slowly, telegraphing his movement, and wiped away her tears with his thumb. "I love you, Lillian Davies. I love your strength and your courage and your stubborn insistence on healing even when it hurts. I love the way you laugh when you think no one is watching, the way you care about everyone you meet, the way you refuse to let what happened to you define you. I love all of you, the whole messy, complicated, beautiful reality of who you are. I do not know if I can love you back," she whispered. "Not the way you deserve. I do not know if I have that in me anymore. Then we will figure it out together. One day at a time, one moment at a time, no pressure, no expectations. Just two people who care about each other, seeing where the road leads." He smiled, that slow, warm smile that made her heart do strange things. "What do you say, Lillian? Will you let me try?" She thought about the last few weeks, about how Warren had never once made her feel afraid or pressured or less than. She thought about his patience, his kindness, his unwavering belief in her worth. She thought about how she felt when she was with him, safe, valued, seen. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, I want to try." He pulled her into his arms then, and for the first time since the attack, Lillian let herself be held by a man without fear. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the scent of him, leather and horses and something uniquely Warren. His arms around her felt like a fortress, protective without being confining. She felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been locked tight for months. "Thank you," she murmured against his shirt, "for seeing me, for not giving up on me." "Never," he promised. "I will never give up on you." The next few weeks brought new challenges and new joys. Warren and Lillian's relationship deepened, though it moved at a pace dictated entirely by her comfort level. He held her hand when they walked, put his arm around her shoulders when they sat together, but he never pushed for more. He let her come to him, let her initiate kisses when she was ready, celebrated each small victory in her healing journey. Her parents, who had extended their stay in Victor, watched the developing relationship with cautious approval. Mr. Davies took Warren aside one afternoon and grilled him thoroughly about his prospects, his intentions, and his character. Warren answered every question honestly, including admitting that he was just a ranch hand with modest savings and no grand prospects. "But I love your daughter, sir, and I will spend every day of my life working to make her happy and keep her safe." Mr. Davies studied him for a long moment. "I believe you, and that is more than I could say for Thomas Whitmore, for all his money and connections. You have my blessing, Warren, though I suspect the real question is whether you have Lillian's heart yet." "Working on it, sir." Lillian, meanwhile, was discovering that healing was not a linear process. She had good days where she felt almost normal, where she could laugh freely and enjoy Warren's company without shadows. But she also had bad days, when the memories came flooding back and she could not stand to be touched, when she snapped at Warren for no reason and then hated herself for it. Warren weathered all of it with steady patience. On the bad days, he gave her space but stayed close enough that she knew he was there. He never made her feel guilty for her moods, never demanded explanations. He just accepted her as she was, complicated and hurting and healing all at once. One particularly difficult night, Lillian woke from a nightmare screaming. Mrs. Chen came running, and they found Lillian curled in a ball on her bed, sobbing. The older woman sat with her, rocking her like a child until the worst passed. "You want I should send for Mr. Warren, Mrs. Chen asked gently. "No, yes, I do not know," Lillian scrubbed at her face. "He should not have to deal with this. It is not fair to him. Love is not about fair, is about choosing to stay even when things are hard." Mrs. Chen stroked her hair. "That young man, he chose you. He sees the hard parts and he stays anyway. That is real love." The next day, Lillian told Warren about the nightmare. They were sitting in the small parlor of the boarding house, and she forced herself to be honest about how much she still struggled. "I understand if this is too much," she said, staring at her hands. "You signed up for friendship, not for middle-of-the-night screaming fits and constant emotional chaos. I would not blame you if you wanted to walk away." Warren was quiet for a moment, and fear clawed at her throat. But when she looked up, his eyes were steady and warm. "Lillian, do you remember that horse I told you about? The one that had been beaten by his previous owner, the one everyone said was too dangerous to keep?" She nodded. "It took me 6 months to earn his trust. 6 months of patient, consistent work before he would let me touch him without panicking. And you know what? The day he finally let me put a saddle on him, the day he carried me around the paddock for the first time, was one of the best days of my life. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. I am not a horse, Warren. No, you are not. You are infinitely more complex and more precious. And if it took me 6 months to earn the trust of an animal, then I figure I can be patient however long it takes for you. A year, 5 years, forever. I am not going anywhere." She felt tears prick her eyes again. "How are you real? How can you possibly be this good?" "I am not good, Lillian. I am just a man who knows what he wants and is willing to work for it. And I want you. All of you, nightmares and all." Spring turned to summer, and the mountains around Victor burst into wild color. Lillian had been in town for nearly 3 months now, and the changes in her were remarkable. She smiled readily, laughed often, and the haunted look had faded from her eyes. She had started helping out at the small schoolhouse, working with the younger children on their reading, and she discovered she loved it even more than she had imagined. Her relationship with Warren continued to deepen. They spent nearly every afternoon together, and she found herself thinking about him constantly. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the rough gentleness of his hands, the sound of his laugh. She was falling in love with him, she realized. Actually, deeply, terrifyingly in love. The realization came one afternoon in late June. They were riding through a meadow filled with wildflowers, the sun warm on their shoulders. Warren was telling her some story about one of the other ranch hands, his face animated and happy. And Lillian thought, with sudden crystalline clarity, that she wanted to spend the rest of her life seeing that expression, being the reason for that happiness. "Warren," she interrupted him mid-sentence, "I need to tell you something." He pulled his horse to a stop, looking at her with concern. "Are you all right? I love you." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I am in love with you, and I know I said I might never be able to feel that way about anyone again, and I know I am still a mess in a lot of ways, but I love you, and I needed you to know." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. "You love me?" "Yes, you impossible man, I love you." He was off his horse in a heartbeat, pulling her down from her saddle and spinning her around. "Say it again." "I love you, Warren Jacobson." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the chaste kisses they had shared before. This was deep and passionate, full of weeks of restrained longing finally unleashed. Lillian kissed him back with everything in her, pouring all her hope and fear and love into the connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she was laughing. "I love you too," he said, cradling her face in his hands. "I have loved you since that first day in the saloon when you looked at me with those eyes full of pain and defiance. I have loved you through every moment since. And I will love you for the rest of my life if you will let me." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it. Marry me, Lillian. Not right away, not until you are ready, but someday. Marry me and let me spend my life proving that you made the right choice." She thought about the last time someone had asked her to marry them, about standing in a church in a white dress while her groom walked away. But this was different. Warren was different. This was not about social standing or family pressure or trying to prove she was still worthy. This was about two people who had found each other in the wreckage and built something real. "Yes," she said again. "Someday when I am ready, yes." They set the wedding for September, giving Lillian a few more months to feel truly ready for the commitment. Her parents were overjoyed, though her mother fretted about the speed of the courtship. "Are you sure, darling? It has only been a few months. You barely know him." "I know him better than I ever knew Thomas, Mama. I know his heart, his character, his soul." That matters more than years of casual acquaintance. Planning the wedding was an entirely different experience than it had been with Thomas. This time, Lillian was in control of every decision, and she chose simplicity over grandeur. They would marry in a small ceremony at the church, just family and close friends. She would wear a simple blue dress instead of an elaborate white gown. They would have a dinner at the boarding house instead of a lavish reception. "I do not need all the trappings," she told Warren as they made plans. "I just need you." The only complication came from the Whitmore family. Thomas's father had indeed made life difficult for Warren, spreading rumors about him around town and trying to get Captain Reeves to fire him. The captain had refused, which only deepened the enmity. Thomas himself had left Victor shortly after the failed wedding, but his parents remained bitter and vindictive. One evening in late August, Warren was walking Lillian back to the boarding house when they encountered Thomas's mother outside the general store. The woman's face twisted with malice when she saw them. "Still with the cowboy, I see." "My son dodged a bullet, not shackling himself to a woman of your reputation." Warren started to respond, but Lillian laid a hand on his arm. She stepped forward, looking the older woman directly in the eye. "Your son is a coward who breaks his promises. Warren is twice the man Thomas will ever be, and I thank God every day that your son had the sense to leave me because it led me to a real man, a good man, a man who knows how to keep his word." Her voice was clear and steady, without a trace of the shame that had once defined her. "You can gossip all you want, Mrs. Whitmore. You can spread lies and try to ruin us, but you cannot touch what Warren and I have. We are beyond your reach." She took Warren's hand and walked away, leaving the older woman sputtering behind them. Once they were out of earshot, Warren pulled her into a side street and kissed her soundly. "That was magnificent. You are magnificent." Lillian grinned. "I have been wanting to say that for months. It felt good. You are not the same woman who stumbled into that saloon crying about being broken." "No, I am not, and I have you to thank for that." "We healed each other," Warren corrected gently. "You gave me purpose, something to fight for. Before you, I was just drifting from job to job, day to day. Now I wake up excited about the future. You did that." The wedding day arrived with perfect autumn weather, crisp and clear with leaves just beginning to turn gold on the aspen trees. Lillian woke in her room at Mrs. Chen's and felt nothing but peace. No nerves, no second thoughts, just absolute certainty that she was making the right choice. Her mother helped her dress in the simple blue gown they had chosen, a dress the color of a Colorado sky. She wore wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil, and her only jewelry was a silver locket Warren had given her containing a tiny photograph of the two of them. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," her mother said, tears streaming down her face, "and so happy. That is all I ever wanted for you." "I am happy, Mama, happier than I ever thought I could be." The church was small, holding maybe 50 people. Lillian was pleased to see that it was full. The ranch hands from the Bar 7 had come, dressed in their best clothes and looking uncomfortable but supportive. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row with other townspeople who had become friends. And standing at the altar was Warren, looking devastatingly handsome in a new suit, his eyes locked on her with such love that it made her breathless. Her father walked her down the aisle with slow, careful steps, his cane tapping against the wooden floor. When they reached the front, he placed her hand in Warren's with a solemn nod. "Take care of my girl," he said. "With my life, sir." The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Father Murphy, who had witnessed the disaster with Thomas, seemed particularly moved to be officiating this wedding. When it came time for the vows, Warren spoke in a clear, firm voice. "I, Warren Jacobson, take you, Lillian Davies, to be my wife. I promise to love you in your strength and in your vulnerability, in joy and in sorrow, in health and in sickness. I promise to be patient with your healing, to stand beside you through nightmares and flashbacks and hard days. I promise to see you, truly see you, every day of our lives. I promise to love all the pieces of you, broken and whole, and to spend my life showing you that you are worthy of love just as you are." Lillian was crying openly now, but they were tears of joy. When it was her turn, she spoke from the heart. "I, Lillian Davies, take you, Warren Jacobson, to be my husband. I promise to love you with all that I am and all that I am becoming. I promise to trust you with my heart, even though it scares me, even though I once thought I would never trust anyone again. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your biggest supporter. I promise to choose you every day for the rest of our lives. You taught me that broken things can be beautiful, that healing is possible, that love is patient and kind and transformative. Thank you for loving me back to life." There was not a dry eye in the church as Father Murphy pronounced them husband and wife. Warren kissed her tenderly, carefully, his hands cradling her face as if she were precious china. The congregation erupted in applause and cheers. The dinner at Mrs. Chen's boarding house was a joyful, raucous affair. The kind woman had outdone herself with the food, and there was music and dancing late into the night. Warren's fellow ranch hands took turns spinning Lillian around the floor, each one promising to look out for her now that she was family. Captain Reeves pulled Warren aside at one point, clasping his shoulder firmly. "You did good, son. That is a remarkable woman you have got there." "I know, sir. I am the luckiest man alive." As the evening wound down, Warren and Lillian slipped away to his cabin on the ranch, which had been cleaned and decorated by helpful friends. It was small but cozy, with a fire crackling in the stone fireplace and candles casting warm light over everything. Lillian felt a flutter of nervousness as Warren closed the door behind them. This was the moment she had been both anticipating and dreading. She wanted to be with her husband, wanted that intimacy and connection. But the memories of violence and violation still lurked in the corners of her mind. Warren seemed to sense her tension. He took her hand gently. "We do not have to do anything tonight except sleep, you know. We have the rest of our lives. There is no rush." She loved him even more for saying it. "I want to try. I want to share that with you. I am just scared." Then we go slow. "And if at any point you want to stop, we stop. No questions, no judgment. Okay? Okay." What followed was tender and patient and healing in ways Lillian had not imagined possible. Warren took his time, checking in with her constantly, making sure every touch was welcome. He worshipped her with hands and lips and whispered words of love, showing her that intimacy could be beautiful, that her body was her own and could be a source of pleasure rather than pain. She cried afterward, but they were good tears, tears of release and relief. Warren held her close, stroking her hair and murmuring reassurances. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest, "for being so patient with me. Always," he promised, "for the rest of our lives." The years that followed were not without challenges. Lillian still had occasional nightmares, still had days when the past pressed too close. But Warren was always there, steady and patient, helping her through the hard moments. And gradually, the bad days became less frequent, the nightmares less intense. They built a life together at the Bar 7 Ranch. Warren continued his work with the horses, gaining a reputation as one of the best horse trainers in the territory. Lillian took a position at the Victor Schoolhouse, teaching reading and arithmetic to students who adored her. Together, they became pillars of the small community, known for their kindness and their willingness to help neighbors in need. 2 years into their marriage, Lillian discovered she was pregnant. The news brought a complicated mix of joy and fear. Pregnancy meant doctors and vulnerability, and the memories of violation threatened to overwhelm her. But Warren was there through every moment, holding her hand during examinations, talking her through panic attacks, reminding her that this was different, that this was their choice and their child. Their son was born on a snowy January morning in 1885, a healthy baby with Warren's dark hair and Lillian's honey-colored eyes. They named him Daniel, after Mrs. Chen's late husband, and the tiny woman wept with joy when they told her. "He will be good man, like his father," she predicted, holding the baby with experienced confidence. "He will have his mother's strength and his father's heart." Parenthood brought new joys and new challenges. Lillian discovered a fierce protectiveness in herself, a determination that her children would grow up safe and loved. Warren was a devoted father, patient with midnight feedings and diaper changes, enchanted by every milestone. When Daniel was 3, they welcomed a daughter they named Grace, a tiny thing with wispy blonde hair and her father's serious expression. And 2 years after that came another son, Samuel, who seemed determined from birth to keep his parents on their toes with his energy and curiosity. The cabin, which had seemed cozy for 2, was bursting at the seams with 5. Captain Reeves, now retired and living in town, helped Warren build an addition, giving them a proper bedroom and space for the children. The ranch had become home in every sense of the word. Lillian's parents visited often, delighting in their grandchildren and marveling at the life their daughter had built. Mr. Davies, now fully recovered from his injuries though he still walked with a slight limp, took Warren aside during one visit. "I never properly thanked you," he said gruffly, "for loving my daughter when she did not think she could be loved, for giving her back her life." "She gave me mine right back, sir. We saved each other. One evening when Daniel was 7, Grace was 4, and Samuel was 2, the family gathered in their expanded cabin for dinner. The children chattered excitedly about their day while Lillian served stew and Warren cut bread. It was an ordinary moment, domestic and simple, but Lillian felt a swell of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. Warren noticed immediately. "What is wrong?" "Nothing. Nothing at all." She looked around the table at her family, at the life she had built from the ashes of trauma and pain. "I was just thinking about that day I stumbled into the saloon, convinced I was broken beyond repair. I never imagined I could have this. A husband who loves me, children, a home, a purpose. I thought my life was over that day. Instead, it was just beginning," Warren said softly, reaching across the table to take her hand. "We both got a new beginning." "Tell us the story," Daniel demanded. He loved hearing about how his parents met, though they edited the more painful parts for young ears. "Your mother was the bravest person I had ever met," Warren began, launching into the familiar tale. "She walked into that saloon with her head held high, even though she was scared and hurting. And I took one look at her and knew she was special." "And Daddy saved you?" Grace asked, her eyes wide. Lillian smiled. "In a way, but really we saved each other. That is what love does. It helps you heal the broken parts." As the evening wore on and the children were tucked into bed, Warren and Lillian stood together on the small porch, looking out at the star-filled Colorado sky. The mountains rose dark and majestic in the distance, and somewhere an owl hooted softly. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had married Thomas Whitmore?" Warren asked, his arm around her shoulders. Lillian leaned into his warmth, considering the question. "Sometimes. But honestly, I am grateful it fell apart. If Thomas had not shown his true colors, if he had gone through with the wedding, I would have been miserable. I would have spent my life pretending to be someone I was not, hiding my pain, slowly dying inside. Instead, I got you. I got this life. I got to become the person I was always meant to be. No regrets, not a single one." She turned to face him, standing on her toes to kiss him softly. "You kept your promise, you know. You loved the pieces of me together. You showed me that being broken was not the end, just a different kind of beginning. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything right back," Warren murmured against her lips. "A home, a family, a purpose. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Now, every day matters." They stood together in the quiet darkness, two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, who had chosen love even when it was hard, who had built something beautiful from broken pieces. The past would always be part of their story, but it no longer defined them. They had taken trauma and pain and transformed it into strength and compassion and deep, abiding love. Inside the cabin, their children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and wanted. The fire in the hearth burned low but steady, casting dancing shadows on the walls. And in the distance, the Colorado mountains stood eternal and unchanging, bearing witness to all the small human dramas played out in their shadow, the loves lost and found, the hearts broken and healed, the lives built brick by patient brick into something lasting and true. Years continued to pass in the peaceful rhythm of ranch life. The children grew, each developing their own distinct personalities. Daniel became fascinated with horses like his father, spending every free moment in the barn learning to train and care for the animals. Grace showed an aptitude for teaching, often helping her mother with the younger students at the schoolhouse. And Samuel, the youngest, had an adventurous spirit that kept his parents constantly vigilant. When Daniel turned 15, Warren began teaching him the finer points of horse training in earnest. The boy had his father's patience and his mother's intuitive understanding of creatures in pain. Together, they worked with difficult horses, earning a reputation that brought clients from across Colorado. "You have a gift," Warren told his son one afternoon as they successfully saddled a formerly wild mare. "Not just with horses. With understanding that healing takes time, that trust has to be earned. Your mother taught me that, and I am teaching you." "Tell me again how you met Mama," Daniel said. He was old enough now to hear the real story, the unedited version with all its pain and triumph. So Warren told him, leaving nothing out. He explained about the attack Lillian had survived, about Thomas's betrayal, about the moment in the saloon when he had first looked into her eyes and seen both devastation and unbreakable strength. "She thought she was broken beyond repair," Warren said quietly. "And I told her I would love the pieces together. That is what real love does, son. It does not require perfection. It sees the damage and chooses to stay anyway, to help heal however it can." Daniel absorbed this solemnly. "That is how I want to love someone someday, like you love Mama. Then you will make some woman very happy." Lillian, overhearing this conversation from the cabin doorway, felt tears sting her eyes. Their children had grown up seeing what real partnership looked like, what committed, patient, transformative love could be. They would carry that knowledge into their own lives, their own relationships. It was a legacy more valuable than money or property. That evening, after the children were asleep, Lillian and Warren sat together by the fire as they had done countless times over the years. Warren was repairing a bridle, his hands moving with practiced skill, while Lillian worked on mending one of Samuel's shirts, torn during some adventure or another. "I overheard you talking to Daniel today," she said softly. "About how we met, about what you told me that first day." Warren looked up, his eyes warm in the firelight. "I meant every word then, and I mean it now. You were never broken, Lillian, just wounded, and wounds heal. Because of you, because you had the patience to wait for me, the courage to love me when I could barely love myself." "We healed each other," Warren insisted, as he always did when she tried to give him too much credit. "You gave me purpose, direction, a reason to be better than I was. Before you, I was drifting. After you, I had a destination." She set aside her mending and moved to sit beside him on the floor, leaning against his legs. He immediately buried his hands in her hair, the gesture familiar and comforting after so many years. "You think the children understand how lucky we are?" she asked. "How easily things could have gone differently. I think they know we love each other. That is enough for now. When they are older, when they face their own challenges and heartbreaks, they will remember what they saw in us. They will remember that healing is possible, that love can overcome trauma, that broken things can become beautiful again." Lillian tilted her head back to look at him. "You still see me as beautiful, after 3 children and all these years." Warren leaned down to kiss her, slow and thorough. "More beautiful every day. You are the strongest person I know, Lillian Jacobson. Everything you survived, everything you overcame, everything you built from the ashes. How could I see you as anything but beautiful?" The next morning brought news that Thomas Whitmore had died in a railroad accident back east, where he had moved after leaving Victor. His parents had already passed away, his mother from influenza and his father from a heart ailment. The Whitmore legacy in Victor was effectively ended. Lillian felt surprisingly little upon hearing the news. Once, Thomas had been the center of her world, the man she thought she would spend her life with. Now he was just a footnote, a wrong turn that had led her to the right path. "Are you all right?" Warren asked when the messenger left. "Yes. I was just thinking how grateful I am that he left me at that altar. At the time, it felt like the worst thing that could happen. But it was actually a gift. It freed me to find you, to build this life." If he had gone through with the wedding, I would have been trapped in a loveless marriage, always feeling less than, always trying to be good enough for someone who saw me as damaged. Instead, I got a partner who sees me as whole. You are whole. You always were. That summer, when Lillian was 42 and Warren was 45, they took a trip to Denver with their children. It was the first time they had left Victor in years, and the city felt overwhelming and exciting after the quiet of ranch life. They visited museums and restaurants, showed the children things they had only read about in books. On their last evening in Denver, Warren arranged for Mrs. Chen, who had also made the trip to visit relatives, to watch the children. He took Lillian to a nice restaurant, the kind of place they never would have been able to afford when they first married. Over good food and wine, they talked about the life they had built, the challenges they had overcome, the future stretching ahead of them. "I have been thinking," Warren said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Captain Reeves wants to sell the Bar 7. He is getting older, wants to move to California to be near his sister. He asked if I wanted to buy it." Lillian's eyes widened. "Buy the ranch?" "Warren, that is a huge undertaking. Do we have the money? We have been saving for years. And Daniel is old enough now to be a real partner in running the place. It would be something to leave our children, a legacy." He paused, studying her face. "But I wanted to talk to you first." This would mean being tied to Victor permanently, really putting down roots. "I know you once thought about leaving, starting somewhere new where no one knew your story." Lillian was quiet for a moment, thinking about the young woman she had been, desperate to escape the gossip and scandal. That woman felt like a stranger now. Victor is home. Those people who knew my story, most of them have seen how I healed, how I built a good life. And the ones who still judge me, well, their opinions do not matter anymore. I am not running from my past, Warren. I am standing in it, proud of how far I have come. So yes, let's buy the ranch. Let's build something for our family. Warren's face lit up with joy. He raised his wine glass. To new beginnings, even 20 years later. To loving the pieces together, Lillian replied, touching her glass to his. They purchased the Bar 7 that fall, and the whole family threw themselves into making it theirs. Warren and Daniel worked on improving the horse training facilities, building a reputation that brought customers from all over the state. Grace, now 14, started a small garden and began selling vegetables and herbs in town. Samuel, at 12, was still figuring out his place but showed talent for the business side of ranching, keeping meticulous records of expenses and profits. Lillian continued teaching, but also took on more responsibilities in Victor's growing community. She started a small library, organized church socials, and mentored young women who came to her with their own stories of trauma and survival. She became known as someone who understood pain but refused to let it win, someone who could offer real hope because she had lived it. One afternoon, a young woman appeared at the ranch, referred by the doctor in town. She was maybe 20, with hollow eyes and a defeated posture that Lillian recognized immediately. Her name was Emily, and she had recently escaped from a violent husband who had nearly killed her. "I do not know what to do," Emily said, sitting in Lillian's kitchen and clutching a cup of tea like a lifeline. "Everyone says I should go back, that marriage is forever, that I made my bed and have to lie in it. But I cannot. If I go back, he will kill me. I know it." Lillian reached across the table and covered the young woman's shaking hand with her own. "You are not going back. You are going to stay here until we figure out a plan, and then you are going to build a new life. I know it seems impossible right now, but I promise you, healing is possible. Happiness is possible. You just have to be brave enough to choose yourself." Emily looked at her with desperate hope. "How do you know? How can you be sure?" "Because I was you, 20 years ago. Not the same circumstances, but the same despair, the same certainty that I was broken beyond repair. And someone told me that broken things could be made beautiful again. He loved me through the healing, showed me patience and kindness until I could believe in myself again. And now, I have a life beyond anything I could have imagined back then. A husband I adore, 3 beautiful children, meaningful work, peace. You can have that too. Over the following weeks, Emily stayed at the ranch, helping with chores and slowly coming back to life. She was there the day Daniel brought home a young woman named Sarah, announcing shyly that she was his sweetheart. She was there when Grace won a prize for her essay in school. She witnessed the daily rhythms of a healed and happy family, and slowly began to believe that such a thing might be possible for her too. "You and Mr. Warren, you really love each other, do not you?" Emily asked Lillian one evening as they washed dishes together. "I can see it in how you look at each other, how you work together. I have never seen anything like it." Lillian smiled, watching through the window as Warren and the boys worked in the corral. "We do. But it was not always easy. We both brought our hurts and fears into the relationship. The difference is we chose to work through them together, to be patient with each other's healing. Love is not just a feeling, Emily. It is a choice you make every single day. I want that someday, but I am too scared to ever trust a man again. You do not have to trust all men. Just one good one when the time is right. And you will know him by his patience, his kindness, his willingness to let you heal at your own pace." Lillian paused, then added gently, "But first, you need to learn to trust yourself again. To know that you are strong enough to survive, that you deserve good things, that your past does not define your future." Emily eventually moved into town, taking a job at the hotel and slowly building her independence. She stayed in touch with Lillian, and years later would bring her own husband to meet the woman who had saved her life, not with grand gestures but with steady kindness and unwavering belief in her worth. As Warren and Lillian entered their 50s, they watched their children become adults with their own dreams and paths. Daniel married Sarah in a lovely ceremony at the ranch, and they built a small house on the property to start their own family. Grace went off to a teaching college in Denver, determined to bring education to rural communities. Samuel surprised everyone by developing an interest in law, eventually studying to become a lawyer with plans to help people who could not afford legal representation. "We raised good humans," Warren said one evening as he and Lillian rocked on their porch, a ritual they had maintained for decades. "We did. But more than that, we showed them what real love looks like, what resilience looks like. They will carry that with them wherever they go." "Do you ever miss the girl you were before the attack?" Warren asked. It was a question he had never asked in all their years together. Lillian considered it carefully. No, that girl was naive and sheltered. She had never faced real adversity, never had to dig deep to find her strength. "What happened to me was terrible and I would not wish it on anyone. But it also made me who I am. It taught me compassion, resilience, the value of choosing joy even in darkness, and it brought me to you. So no, I do not miss her. I am proud of who I became instead." Warren pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I am proud of you too, every single day." Their golden years were peaceful, filled with grandchildren and the satisfaction of work well done. The Bar 7 ranch thrived under their management, and then under Daniel's as Warren gradually stepped back from the daily operations. Lillian retired from teaching but continued her community work, always making time for women who needed a listening ear and proof that healing was possible. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration at the ranch. The whole community turned out, testament to the lives Warren and Lillian had built and the people they had helped along the way. There were speeches and toasts, laughter and tears. When it was Warren's turn to speak, he stood with Lillian beside him and addressed the crowd. 30 years ago, I met a woman who thought she was broken beyond repair. I told her I would love the pieces together and she let me try. But the truth is, she did most of the healing herself. She just needed someone to believe in her until she could believe in herself. Lillian, you are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful person I know. Thank you for letting me love you. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for every single day. Lillian, crying openly, stood to respond. Warren saw me when I could not see myself. He loved me when I could not love myself. He waited patiently while I healed, never pushing, never demanding, just being steadfast and true. Our marriage has not always been easy, but it has always been worth it. And I would choose you 1,000 times over, in every lifetime, in every universe. You are my heart. The celebration continued late into the night, but eventually Warren and Lillian slipped away to their cabin, now empty with all the children grown and gone. They lay in bed together, hands clasped, looking at the ceiling beams Warren had installed decades earlier. You remember the first night we spent here as husband and wife? Warren asked. How scared you were, how patient we had to be. I remember thinking I might never be able to be intimate with someone again. And then you showed me that touch could be healing, that my body was my own, that love could be gentle and safe. You showed me that some things are worth waiting for, that the best things in life require patience and work and unwavering commitment. They fell asleep, as they had done for 30 years, wrapped in each other's arms, content in the knowledge that they had built something beautiful from broken pieces. Years continued to pass in gentle rhythm. Warren and Lillian grew older together, their hair going gray, their bodies slowing down, but their love remaining as strong as ever. They watched Daniel and Sarah raise 4 children of their own on the ranch. They attended Grace's wedding to a fellow teacher and celebrated when she opened her own school. They cheered when Samuel won his first major case, defending a woman against an abusive husband. Our legacy, Lillian said, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Not just the ranch or the property, but this. The knowledge that love heals, that broken things can be made whole, that courage and patience can transform lives. You transformed my life, Warren said, as he had said countless times over the years, and you transformed mine. We saved each other. When Warren was 72 and Lillian was 69, Warren's health began to fail. His heart, which had beat strong and steady for so many years, began to falter. The doctor in Victor was honest about the prognosis. Warren had maybe a year, maybe less. Lillian refused to crumble. She had survived too much, fought too hard to fall apart now. Instead, she channeled all her strength into making Warren's remaining time as comfortable and joyful as possible. They spent their days talking about the life they had built, the memories they had created, the love that had sustained them through everything. I do not regret a single day, Warren told her one afternoon as they sat in their usual spots on the porch, watching the mountains. Every moment with you has been a gift. Even the hard ones, the nightmares and panic attacks and days when I could barely function, especially those, because they taught me what real love is, not the easy surface kind that flees at the first sign of difficulty. The deep, committed kind that says I am not going anywhere, no matter what. You taught me that kind of love, Lillian. She took his hand, so much frailer now than it had been that day in the saloon when he first reached for her. I love you, Warren Jacobson. Through this life and whatever comes next, I love you too. And when I am gone, I need you to promise me something, anything. Do not stop living. Do not let grief consume you. You have too much left to give this world, too many people who still need your strength and wisdom. Promise me you will keep going, keep helping, keep showing people that healing is possible." "I promise," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But I am going to miss you so much. And I will miss you, but this is not goodbye forever, just goodbye for now. We will find each other again, somehow." Warren passed away on a cool October morning, surrounded by his family with Lillian holding his hand. His last words were, "Thank you for letting me love you," and Lillian held onto them like a lifeline. The grief was immense, but Lillian kept her promise. She did not crumble. Instead, she channeled her pain into purpose, working harder than ever in her community, helping other widows navigate their loss, continuing to counsel survivors of violence and trauma. She told Warren's story constantly, how he had loved her back to life, how he had shown her that broken things could be beautiful. "He saw me when I thought I was invisible," she would say. "He loved me when I thought I was unlovable, and he gave me the greatest gift possible, the courage to heal. That is what I want to give to others now." Lillian lived for another 12 years after Warren's death, long enough to see great-grandchildren, to celebrate her 80th birthday surrounded by the massive family she and Warren had created, to watch the Bar 7 Ranch continue to thrive under Daniel's leadership. She never remarried, never even considered it. Warren had been her once-in-a-lifetime love, and she was content with the memory of what they had shared. On a spring morning very much like the one when she had first stumbled into that saloon so many years earlier, Lillian passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was laid to rest beside Warren on a hillside overlooking the ranch, beneath the mountains they had both loved. At her funeral, people came from all over Colorado to pay their respects. Not just family, but dozens of women whose lives she had touched, whose wounds she had helped heal, whose broken pieces she had helped love back together. They told stories of her strength, her compassion, her unwavering belief in the possibility of healing and happiness even after trauma. Daniel stood to give the eulogy, looking out at the massive crowd. "My mother liked to say that she was broken beyond repair when she met my father. And my father told her he would love the pieces together. Together, they proved that love can heal, that patience can transform, that broken things can become beautiful again. They showed everyone who knew them what real partnership looks like, what committed love can accomplish. Their legacy is not just this ranch or our family, but every person they helped, every life they touched, every survivor they gave hope. They saved each other, and in doing so, they saved countless others. That is a life well lived." The epitaph on Lillian's gravestone, placed beside Warren's, reads simply, "She was loved back to life, and she loved others back to life in return." And in Victor, Colorado, in the mountains that had witnessed so much human drama across the years, their story became legend. Not a tragedy, but a triumph. Not a tale of brokenness, but of healing. Not an ending, but a love that transcended time and death and every obstacle in between. Because Warren and Lillian had proven, through 3 decades of marriage and a lifetime of choices, that broken things could indeed be made beautiful again. That love, real and patient and transformative, could heal even the deepest wounds. That the pieces of a shattered heart could be loved back together into something stronger than before. Their children carried that knowledge forward, teaching it to their own children who taught it to theirs. The Bar 7 Ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to 2 people who had taken their pain and transformed it into purpose, their wounds into wisdom, their broken pieces into a beautiful whole. And somewhere, perhaps in whatever comes after this life, Warren and Lillian found each other again. 2 souls who had recognized something essential in each other from the very first moment, who had chosen love even when it was hard, who had built something lasting from the ashes of trauma and betrayal. Hand in hand, whole and healed, together at last in a place where there was no more pain, no more fear, only endless love and perfect peace.